But it's not just that special feeling you leave them with, right? You give them a physical item they can share with their friends, a photograph or be what it may.
Oh, well, yes. Well, I was very lucky insofar as my assistant surgeon was a very keen cyclist. In fact, he could nip through traffic even at the height of the rush hour. Oh. And as soon as we finished the operation and took all the photographs, we would roll up the film, give it to him, and he would get on his bike and shoot off the photomat, and he'd wait there till the prints came through. Mm. As soon as he got the prints, he'd return. Well, round about this time, the patient was usually in intensive care, and if they weren't too groggy, we would show them the prints. And sometimes, if they were a little bit groggy, if they said, well, I don't like that, or I don't like the way you airbrushed that, or the way you moved the liver over, we would just undo the sutures, and while they were still groggy under the anesthetic, we would do additions. And then, of course, x-rays came along. Now, x-rays are really only a shadow, but it gives you a new perspective on the internal
What about video cameras? That would seem to be
video were... I've got to tell you that as far as I was concerned, video was really the start of my better time in art, because with video the organs move after exercise, and this placed the internal organs sometimes in slightly different areas. A Kuwaiti oil sheikh actually commissioned me to fit little video cameras all over his internal bodily cavity, and he would show them to his friends on large screen monitors.
He'd have huge parties and everyone...
Oh, they'd eat their
and he would
lambs, sheep's eyes and all that. He would
move around.
He would do back somersaults and get on seesaws and swing from chandeliers.
Must have been a sensational effect.
Absolutely sensational.
Now, you know, much of modern art these days is what they call abstract. It's sort of a blending of different forms and images and colors. Now, is it possible for you to bring the elements of abstraction into your work as an internal artist?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. I've layered organs, I've chopped them up. I've actually used a kidney in a salad shooter, which was a wonderful idea. So we opened up the abdominal cavity and we went there. It really looked so good. It's very, very beautiful. You could, of course, use a filmy membrane, which unfortunately would be dishonest, but you've got to be concerned with the fact that the organ must function. If it doesn't function, it's no good at all. Two kidneys, one will function, one you can use for decorative purposes.
Yeah. This is where your art becomes almost dangerous, you could say.
Well, all art is dangerous. It's a deadly thing. Salvador Dali, for instance, did a lot of very deadly things, but from a surrealistic point of view, you've got the tension, you've got the form, you've got the function, but you mustn't be too abstract, because that is where it becomes dangerous.
Have you experimented with surrealism?
Well, you get the total repression of reality. You can, for instance, take the colon, and you've got 22 feet of small intestine to play with, and you can twist them into forms. Now, I discovered from a friend of mine, a rather exotic clown who did balloon animals. Very esoteric he was, but he loaned me a book on balloon modeling, where they make these animals, and I have actually made internally a person with a whole lot of little poodles all through the small intestine, and then we had like Snoopies coming up here, and little bears across the transverse colon, and the descending colon. We did other things. It really was quite interesting. I was proud of that.
Yeah,
that was a good job.
You know, I'm curious as to the various types of surgery that you use when you're working internally as an artist.
Well, basically there were three types that we used. We used the laparoscopic. We don't cut them open. You take a very small filament and a very tiny camera, and you can push that in through a vein or an artery, and you can move things, you can cut things, you can airbrush.
I read how you turned an old useless appendix into a Matisse almost, right?
Yeah, fibrotic appendix.
Wonderful.
It was, and then there was the cryosurgery. Now, that is what you realize. They are frozen. It is not permanent. You get a sort of frosty look about things. We did do a practical application along with the artistic application for a friend of mine who was going to Europe and we installed a small refrigeration unit inside his stomach. He drank scotch on the rocks, and in Europe they don't give you ice frequently with drinks. So by drinking the scotch with the refrigeration unit inside the bodily cavity in the stomach, in the fundus of the stomach, it really was amazing. But it's all a matter of dollars and cents. In fact, I'm thinking I might go to NEA, since a combination of arts and medicine. I might get a government grant.
Good idea. What about laser surgery?
Laser surgery is very, very interesting indeed, and very exciting. It brings a whole new realm, and you get a much greater precision with laser surgery. Now, for instance, I actually executed a miniature in the liver of the Red Boy. You know that famous Red Boy. And well, we had a slight problem with that, because you see, we had just done this beautiful miniature of the Red Boy, and the anesthesiologist ran out of oxygen. Now, that's the point where the Red Boy became a blue boy, but it didn't matter, because it was still a beautiful miniature. You can, I can take a kidney and I can do what Henry Moore could do with a block of granite. In fact, for that matter, I've often thought of doing a repositioning of Mount Rushmore with the liver, which is a very easy.
I understand a very religious woman came to you.
Oh, with the gallstones, I did the most beautiful nativity. A little nativity scene with her gallstone.
Right out of the gallstones.
Yes. And there was the gambler. The gambler, that was most amazing. He also, if they have kidney stones, he had kidney stones, the gambler, and I took these stones and I squared them off, laser, and then I put little dots on them. And he had a load of fun, because he would go out and he'd do cartwheels and somersaults, and then with the internal video camera, he could look to see whether or not he'd hit a 7.
How do you practice? I mean, how do you hone your art?
Well, I would practice with the cadaver in the morgue, and I'd go straight on through. I need a fresh canvas, though. I must tell you a rather humorful thing that occurred when I was practicing in the morgue. One of the morgue attendants who'd been up all night fell asleep in a spare slab. And I was just moving, you know, from one cadaver, and suddenly with him, and I made the first and say, oh, he was very unpleasant. His brother-in-law was a lawyer, and he, as a matter of fact, I tried to make them they had no understanding of their obligation to posterity. I pointed this out to them, but they had no idea.
I understand you once tried an Art Deco style on a thoracic cavity. Is this true? What?
There was one man who was a very heavy smoker, and his ordinary family doctor, not specializing obviously as I do, told him that he had very little time left, and he wanted a picture to leave his children. He felt that he would like some form of visual memorabilia for the kids. And his lungs were very, very dark. So I installed little battery units in the bronchioles, and I put Duracell batteries in, because I was very impressed with their experiments with rabbits.
Right.
And this gave a sort of moody red glow. And then, because it was Art Deco, I wanted some extraneous bodily tissue, and he didn't have any. So I suddenly realized he wasn't circumcised, so we did that. And that allowed me to cut out a top hat and cane.
Brilliant.
And I sewed that onto the anterior portion of the right lung. And I was so delighted and enthralled, because I actually produced an Art Deco mood that was reminiscent of a 1925 New York hotel room, and his kids who were art loving, they were very contented.
Tell me about some of your experiments with Dadaism, which often involves machines as subjects. You've done some of that?
Well, it's amazing how you can dress up a pacemaker to make it look more artistic. An artificial heart valve, you can attach little things to it. I remember once I attached a beating heart with ligaments that we took from other parts of the body to a suprarenal gland. And that was rather wonderful, because as the heart pumped, the suprarenal gland revolved.
Wonderful.
And with proper lighting, it looked wonderful.